Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langyate girim yatrapathamaham vande Shri Gurudinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam. So we were discussing the final episode in the Dhruva Leela, which is Dhruva Maharaj returning back to Godhead. And we were at the part when Dhruva had gone to Bajraka Ashram and absorbed. He did token amount of austerity over there, but absorbed in devotional service. And then he sees an airplane, a glowing airplane from Vaikuntha coming, and Nand and Sunand, two of the closest associates of Lord Vishnu. So he circumambulates the plane, circumambulates the residence, and gets ready to board the plane. So we are basically discussing that part of the chapter from verse 28. Maitre uvacha nishamaya Vaikuntha niyojya mukhyayo madhujutam vacham gurukrama priyaha kritabhishekah kata nityamangalo munina prananamyashisham abhyavadaya. The great sage Maitreya continued, Maharaj Dhruva was very dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When he heard the sweet speeches of the Lord's chief associates in the Vaikuntha planet, he immediately took his sacred bath, dressed himself with suitable ornaments, and performed his daily spiritual duties. Thereafter, he offered his respectful obeisances to the great sages present there and accepted their blessings. Based on the statements of Nand and Sunanda, Dhruva could understand that he was going back to Godhead in the very same body. So Dhruva Krita Abhisheka. So he purified his body by performing the bathing ritual and Krita Nitya Mangala. So Krita Nitya Mangala is his daily auspicious activities. So in this way, he purified his gross and subtle body. Then out of humility, he offered obeisances to the sages and accepted their blessings. So, Abha Abhyavadyat. So Vishwanath Chakravarti said Abhavadyat actually means that he made them give their blessings. And really speaking, he was ready to go back to his spiritual world, obviously in a much more exalted platform than the sages who were in the material world. But the process of spiritual advancement is that one never abandons one humility. If anything, the humility actually increases. So Dhruva Maharaj did not consider the fact that now he was more exalted than the sages. He is becoming qualified to go to the spiritual world, whereas they are still conditioned. And Vishwanath Chakravarti says he made them give because the sages were reluctant. They could understand his exalted position. But out of his humility, he forced them to give in a good way. They were so much taken in by his humility that on their own they were compelled to bless him, knowing in their heart that he was beyond their blessings. He was in a position to bless them. So the goal of bhakti is bhakti. The basis of bhakti is humility. And as one makes progress in bhakti, one also increases one's humility. Srila Prabhupada also notes the Kritanitya Mangala, that one might think that if he was going back to Godhead, why did he have to perform his daily rituals? And Prabhupada says that we should mark how dutiful Dhruva Maharaj was in his devotional service, even at the time he left this material world. He was constantly alert in the performance of devotional duties. Every devotee should take his bath early in the morning and decorate his body with tilak. In Kali Yuga, one can hardly acquire gold or jewel ornaments, but the 12 tilak marks on the body are sufficient as auspicious decorations to purify the body. So as you know that when we place the 12 tilak marks on the body, we also chant the name of the presiding deity of that particular tilak. So when we put on the forehead, we say Lalatam Keshavam Dhyaya Om Keshvaya Namah, Narayana Uthodare Om Narayana Namah. So not only are we marking our body as a temple of the Lord, but by chanting those mantras, we are also placing the protection of the deities on our body. So in this way, by marking the body at 12 places with the tilak marks, then our body is like a fortress. It is protected by the mercy of Lord Vishnu all around. And that is a lot more beautiful and a lot more potent than any gold or gems that we can adorn our body with. Prabhupada also says that Dhruva Maharaj was living at that time in Badrika Ashram. There were great other sages there. He did not become puffed up because the airplane sent by Lord Vishnu was waiting for him. As a humble Vaishnava, he accepted blessings from all the sages before riding on the plane brought by the chief of the Vaikuntha associates. Next verse, 29. Parityabhyacharya this different. Parityabhyacharya deshangriyam parshadava vibandaya cha ayeshatad adheshtatum vibradrupam hiranmayam. Before getting aboard, Dhruva Maharaj worshipped the airplane, circumambulated it, and also offered obeisances to the associates of Vishnu. In the meantime, he became as brilliant and illuminating as molten gold. He was completely prepared to board the transcendental plane. So why did he circumambulate the plane? Because just like Lord Vishnu is worshipable, everything related to Lord Vishnu is also worshipable. His paraphernalia, his dham, his associates, they're all equally worshipable. So the airplane of Lord Vishnu is worshipable as Lord Vishnu, which is why Dhruva, he circumambulates the airplane and offers obeisances to the associates of Lord Vishnu. So Srila Prabhupada gives the Dhruv Loka as an example to illustrate in the purport that just because something is situated in the material world does not necessarily make it material. And one of the questions that is asked is that it's repeatedly said that Dhruv goes back to Vaikuntha, but yet his planet is visible in the material world to materialize. We can go look into the sky and see the pole star. And we also know that when the Ganges falls, it falls first into Dhruv Loka and then it comes down. So essentially the water of the Ganges is also coming after touching Dhruv Loka. So how can we say both of them are true at the same time? That it's a planet very much in the visible and existing in the material world, but yet we say it's Vaikuntha, it's spiritual. So Srila Prabhupada explains that. He says that as Shishumar, Vishnu Lok or Dhum Lok are completely different from this material world. So a Vishnu temple within this world is also completely different from this material world. As soon as we are in a temple, we should know very well that we are situated differently from the material world. In the temple, Lord Vishnu, his throne, his room, and all other things associated with the temple are transcendental. The three modes, Sattvaguna, Rajaguna, and Tamaguna, have no entrance into the temple. It is said, therefore, that to live in the forest is in the mode of goodness, to live in the city is in the mode of passion, to live in a brothel or liquor shop or slaughterhouse is in the mode of ignorance, but to live in the temple means to live in Vaikuntha. So same principle applied, that just because the temple is material does not, or exists in the material world, does not make it material. Just because the deities are made of dhatu does not make them material. Just because the holy name is materially vibrated and heard does not make it material. Now, one can still, especially for those who have lived in the temple, one may debate this point, that it's not true that the temples are transcendental. There's mode of passion over there. There is argument that happens. There is quarrels that can happen. So the same principle that we apply on the holy name applies there also. That if we approach the holy name with faith, in proportion to the faith, the spiritual aspect of the holy name increases correspondingly. If one approaches the holy name infested with the 10 offenses, then one only scratches the material covering of the holy name. But if one approaches with faith, then the holy name is revealed in its complete spiritual form. If one goes to the temple understanding that this is non-different from the abode of Lord Vishnu, then one will experience the transcendence to the mode over there. Verse 30. Tado tatana padaha putro dadra sankatam agam mrityur murdhini padam dattva aruroha graham. When Dhruv Maharaj was attempting to get on the transcendental plane, he saw death personified approach him. Not caring for death, however, he took advantage of the opportunity to put his feet on the head of death. And thus he got on the airplane, which was as big as a house. So this verse essentially illustrates the difference between material death and death of a spiritually emancipated person. So for one who is destined to take birth again, death personified in the form of Yamadutas or Yamraj is a source of fear and anxiety. We see that in the Ajmer pastime, that when he was close to death, then the Yamadutas came. And Ajmer was in so much of anxiety as they were pulling his subtle body out of his gross body. For one who is going back to Godhead, he holds no fear about death. So Dhruv stubbing on the head of death personified illustrates this point, that a person who is going back to Godhead has no fear of leaving the body. Whether the person is in the body or without or leaving the body, it's the same. Now, in case of Dhruv, is not even leaving the body. He's going back to the spiritual world in the very same body. But other jivas, they may be leaving the gross and subtle body and going back to the spiritual world, but it's the same. There is no fear of death. Even if they are not going back to the spiritual world, they still have no fear of death, because they know that wherever they are, they will continue in the service to the Lord. So the changing of the bodies is simply an opportunity for them to serve the Lord in a different way, but essentially continue the service. Prabhupada gives the analogy of the cat and a kitten, that when a cat catches the mouse, then its jaws are the personification of death. And when it is holding its own kitten, then its jaws are gentle. They are the source of protection. Similarly, death for the non-devotees, it is the source of pain and anxiety. For the devotees, it is inconsequential. So Prabhupada said that when Dhruv Maharaj boarded the plane, he took advantage of the arrival of death personified, who came to offer him obeisances. Putting his feet on the head of death, he got up on the unique airplane, which is described here as big as a house, graham. Verse 31. Tadadun bhayo nedur mridangpan vadhyaha gandharva mukhyaha prajagu petu kushum vrishtayaha. At that time, drums and kettle drums resounded from the sky. The chief Gandharvas began to sing, and the other demigods showered flowers like torrents of rain upon Dhruv Maharaj. So this is an example of the universal affection for a devotee. When somebody ascends to the heavenly planets, then the residents of the heavenly planets are not particularly pleased. We see that in the pastime of Trishanku, that when Vishwamitra was trying to send Trishanku to Indralok, and Indra was very upset. He looked at his qualifications, said he is not qualified, and refused to let him enter. Now, even if the person is qualified to enter, then of course he enters, but it's still in the material realm. There is still the sense of competition, there is still the sense of envy. But when the person is going back to the spiritual world, then nobody has any anger or envy. That person becomes truly a Jat Shatru. The person has no enemy in the living world. The devotee loves everyone, and everyone loves a devotee. And we see that reflecting in the lives of devotees, even when they are sadhakas. That as one becomes more and more advanced in the devotion, even if they're practicing devotees, then people automatically tend to become benevolent towards them. If you see the pastimes of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, Then they took so many risks, but there was always somebody to help them out, somebody to give them a house to live in, somebody to give them directions, somebody to give them good advice. The six disciples, they were in London, and at that time it was said that meeting the Beatles was more difficult than meeting God, because they had that status. And with relatively little effort, they got into touch with the Beatles. The Beatles welcomed them. George Harrison welcomed them, made the record, etc. So it's almost like magical. And we see that at other places also. So that's the nature of bhakti, because it brings one closer to Krishna, and Krishna is all attractive. The devotees also become all attractive. Verse 32. Sarchasvar arokshayan sunitin janinim dhruvaha anvasmarad agam hetva dinam yasya trivashtapam. Dhruv was situated in the transcendental airplane, which was just about to start, when he remembered his poor mother, Suniti. He thought to himself, how shall I go alone to the Vaikuntha planet and leave behind my poor mother? Previous verses, we see the humility of Dhruva, how he is offering obeisances, taking blessings from the sages, how he offers respect to the airplane, the associates of Lord Vishnu. Now we see another important quality of a devotee, that is gratitude. Just like humility is very important, gratitude is a very important quality of a devotee. And the greatest debt that a devotees have is to those who help them advance in Krishna consciousness. So we know that it was Suniti who had given instructions to Dhruva to go and worship Lord Vishnu. So he held that debt of gratitude in his heart. And because of that, he felt reluctant to go. Now, Dhruv is not reluctant because Suniti is his mother. It's not because of the material affection of a boy for his, or a person for his mother. But it is because of his gratitude that she was his path pradakshak guru. Which is why we see when Dhruva had returned from the forest, there was so much glorification of Suniti, because she had given him this path for spiritual advancement. So Srila Prabhupada in his purport, he gives makes very important points in the purport, and he talks about two important, slightly controversial topics. Maybe not at that time, but I guess Prabhupada had foresight, so they became more so later on. But he talks about the role of Shaksha gurus and Diksha gurus, and he also talks about the role of women as gurus. So Prabhupada says that actually Dhruv Maharaj's mother Suniti was his path pradakshak guru. Path pradakshak guru means the guru or spiritual master who shows the way. Such a guru is sometimes called Shiksha Guru. Although Narad Muni was his Diksha Guru, initiating spiritual master, Suniti, his mother, was the first who gave him instruction on how to achieve the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is the duty of the Shiksha Guru or Diksha Guru to instruct the disciple in the right way. And it depends on the disciple to execute the process. According to Shastric injunctions, there is no difference between Shiksha Guru and Diksha Guru. And generally the Shiksha Guru later on becomes the Diksha Guru. Suniti, however, being a mother, being a woman, and specifically his mother, could not become Dhruva Maharaj's Diksha Guru. Still, he was not less obliged to Suniti. There was no question of carrying Narad Muni to Vaikuntha, but Dhruva Maharaj thought of his mother. So Prabhupada talks about many important points here. So for those who have done the ISKCON disciple course, the role of Shiksha and Diksha Gurus is extensively spoken about because it's a source of confusion now, where in many cases the Diksha Guru, either because they have so many disciples or because they're separated geographically, they are not able to give their attention to the disciples. Also, many devotees, they cultivate other devotees and they help them make advancements by taking initiation. But the early relation, and in many cases the primary relation, remains with the devotees who are cultivating them. So Prabhupada says that there is no difference between Diksha Guru and Shiksha Guru, and this is again a point that is made in the disciple course. Other than the obvious fact that the Diksha Guru gives initiation, and the Shiksha Guru and the Diksha Guru are in sync with one another. The duty of the Shiksha Guru is to understand the mood and desires of the Diksha Guru, and the duty of the Diksha Guru is to support the Shiksha Guru in their relationship. He also talks about, he says that Suniti was a woman, so there was no question of her becoming a Diksha Guru. And of course, this is one of the topics that is hotly discussed in ISKCON right now. Not hotly, but it has been discussed in the GBC for many years about women gurus. It comes and goes there. And there are different quotes that are given. In this context, one understanding is that Prabhupada says that specifically his mother. So that may be contextually putting Suniti in a different situation. Prabhupada also says that why did Dhruva not remember Narad Muni? If he's remembering his Shiksha Guru, he should also remember his Diksha Guru. He said there's no question because Narad Muni is eternally liberated. The second half of the purport shows how Krishna is quick to reciprocate with the desires of his devotees. Dhruva simply desires the welfare of his mother. So, anva smarat. As soon as he smarat means thought, as soon as he thought, the Lord made it happen. So, it's not that devotees are desireless. They are actually full of desires. But their desires are the same as the desire of the Lord. And the Lord makes their desires his own desires. Prabhupada would say this is ekatvam. This is the understanding of oneness. That there is no oneness in form, there is oneness in purpose and desire. Verse 33. iti vyavastitam tasya vyavasaya surottamam darshayama saturdevim puroyane nagacchatim. The great associates of Vaikuntha Loka, Nanda and Sunanda, could understand the mind of Dhruva Maharaj, and thus they showed him that his mother, Suniti, was going forward in another plane. So, this is the glories of having a liberated son or a disciple. In the 7th canto, in the pastime of Narsingadev, he says to Prahlad Maharaj that, my dear Prahlad, your father has been purified along with 21 forefathers in your family. Just because you were born in this family, the entire dynasty has been purified. This is 7th canto, 10th chapter, verse 18. So this is the glory of becoming a devotee, that you are doing ultimate welfare to your family. That a dutiful son can serve the parents only in this life. But a devotee child can serve not just the parents, but many generations and give them real service. So in the verse spoken by Lord Narsingadev, 21 is actually written as Trihi Saptati, 3 times 7. And it's interpreted a little differently. So you will see this 21 interpreted a little differently. In the translation, it is said 21 forefathers. Sometimes 3 Saptavi means that 7 three ways, which means 3 generations up, 3 generations below, and 3 generations sideways. Srila Prabhupada often says 14 generations. I'm not sure which verse speaks about this, or he basically uses the 7 generations up and down and talks 14 generations. But sufficient to say that several generations. And this is not only true for seminal parents, it is also true for Guru disciple. And Srila Prabhupada writes a very moving purport with a lot of characteristic humility in this. Prabhupada says that the incidents prove that the Shaksha or Diksha Guru, who has a disciple who strongly executes devotional service like Dhruva Maharaj, can be carried by the disciple, even though the instructor is not advanced. Although Suniti was an instructor to Dhruva Maharaj, she could not go to the forest because she was a woman, nor could she execute the austerities and penances as Dhruva Maharaj did. Still, Dhruva Maharaj was able to take his mother with him. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj also delivered his atheistic father Hiranyakashipu. The conclusion is that a disciple or an offspring who is a very strong devotee can carry with him to Vaikuntha Lok either his father, mother, Shaksha, or Diksha Guru. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say, if I could perfectly deliver even one soul back home, back to Godhead, I would think my mission, propagating Krishna consciousness, to be successful. The Krishna consciousness movement is spreading now all over the world. And sometimes I think that even though I am crippled in many ways, if one of my disciples becomes as strong as Dhruva Maharaj, then he will be able to carry me with him to Vaikuntha Loka. So it's a very sweet and wonderful purport. Now, of course, we should not think that we are going to carry Prabhupada back to Vaikuntha Lok. The purpose of the purport is for us to understand the natural humility of Prabhupada and try and imbibe it. Similarly, we should not be in this mood that I will take to bhakti so I can deliver my parents. Or we should not be in the mood that I'll make my child a devotee so that he can deliver me. The essential mood is to recognize the mercy of the Lord. That the Lord is so merciful that one way or the other he is anxious to give us mercy. Whichever way. Whether it's through a perfected disciple, whether it is through a child or a parent or a guru, the mercy is there. So, in essence, if we are able to recognize this merciful nature of the Lord, then we can perform our bhakti with more conviction. Sometimes we get burdened by our own shortcomings. And it's good. It's good to, to think about them and see if you can do better, but they should not cripple us. When we get burdened by our shortcomings, then we should meditate on the extremely merciful nature of the Lord to pull us up. Okay, so we'll discuss one more verse. After that, see if there is any discussion. Tatra tat prasamshadbhi Bhakti Vaibhava SB avakirya manano dadrashe kusume kramasho grahan. While Dhruva Maharaj was passing through space, he gradually saw all the planets of the solar system. And on the path, he saw all the demigods in their airplanes showering flowers upon him like rain. So Prabhupada says that in the Mundak Upanishad, it is said, Yasmin Vigyate Sarvam Evam Vigyatam Bhavati, which means that by knowing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything becomes known to the devotee. Similarly, by going to the planet of the Personality of Godhead, one can know all the other planetary system on the path to Vaikuntha. We should remember that Dhruva Maharaj's body was different from our bodies. While boarding the Vaikuntha airplane, his body changed to a completely spiritual golden hue. No one can surpass the higher planets in a material body. But when one gets a spiritual body, he can travel not only to the higher planetary system of this material world, but even to the still higher planetary system known as Vaikuntha Loka. It is well known that Narad Muni travels everywhere, both in spiritual and material world. In the second half of the purport, Srila Prabhupada gives a message to the mothers who are reading this purport. Make your child a devotee. Prabhupada says that it should be noted that Suniti was going to Vaikuntha Lok. She also changed her body into a spiritual form. Every mother like Suniti must take care of her son and train him to become a brahmachari from the age of 5 years and to undergo austerity and penances for spiritual realization. The benefit will be that if her son becomes a strong devotee like Dhruva, certainly not only will he be transferred back home, back to Godhead, but she will also be transferred with him to the spiritual world. And even though she may be unable to undergo austerities and penances in executing devotional service. So strong motivation for mothers to bring up their children as Krishna conscious devotees. Okay, I'll pause here and see if there is discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. This is Nandagopal Das. Thank you for the nice class. Prabhu, I'm just the question, recent discussion just now we had about how quite often I also feel that this disqualification to serve the spiritual master is given, but then the inability or what do you call shortcomings. That is something that quite often bothers me, and what bothers me more is that I, as you said, I try to meditate upon the mercy that comes upon us. In spite of our shortcomings, still we are able to do something. But then what happens is it puts us, or at least I notice myself, puts me in a position of weakness, in the sense that I take that as an excuse to be to dwell on the shortcomings without endeavoring to come out of it. You know what I don't know whether I convey my message correctly. um, how we can overcome, what is the antidote for not taking it as an excuse, or yeah, I know I have the shortcomings, but my spiritual master's mercy and Krishna's mercy will enable me to make it through. That faith is there, but then we also have to put some endeavor, isn't it, Prabhu? Then I was thinking that what is the antidote for such kind of complacency, or some kind of, I don't know what is the right word, but that's what I'm thinking. Would you please show some light on it?
Thank you, Prabhu. It's a nice practical question. I have some thoughts, and we have wonderful Vaishnavas in the Sangha, so maybe others can contribute. So what you're describing is probably can be generalized, not just to shortcomings in serving Guru, but also shortcomings in executing sadhana, chanting, reading. We do tend to become, go to one or two sides of the spectrum. Either we become complacent, thinking that the processes of descending mercy will wait for it to catch us, or we become frustrated and say that this is too much for me, it's not meant for me, why should I even attempt to do that? So first antidote, as you were phrasing in the question, is what Arjun did. Right? Arjun was in this situation. The first antidote was that he surrendered even more. Karpanya dosha pata swabhava, and he says that karpanya dosha, that this has become paralyzing to me. I am basically immobilized by it. And the antidote was that he says that prachami tvam dharma samudacheta, that I completely surrender to you. Nobody else but you can help me. So proportionate to the surrender is the help that we get. I think if we internalize our shortcomings, then they stay with us. Now, Arjun was fortunate to have Krishna on his chariot. We may not have Krishna in our chariot, but we have devotees, and we have spiritual master, and they are there to reciprocate to our surrender. So the effort that we put in is our surrender, and the restitution is the reciprocation by the devotee or Guru Maharaj that you surrender. The other end of the spectrum was complacency, that thinking that whether you like it or not, or whether you try or not, the mercy will come and sweep you. So Prabhupada would give this example about if a thief wants to make advancements, then he tries to hang out with other thieves, and then he'll hear from them the latest techniques of picking a lock or stealing, and then he makes advancements. That way, it's a slightly humorous way, but Prabhupada would give this analogy. So if we are astute enough to recognize this complacency in us and recognize that it is an obstacle, then we can associate with those who are enthusiastic. And their enthusiasm would be infectious. It would help us pull us out of our complacency. So the nature of the spiritual life of practicing devotees is actually, it is structured in this way. There are festivals which is there to inspire enthusiasm in you. There are preaching opportunities. There are formal and informal Vaishnav Sanghas. So all this is going on in order to keep this flame of enthusiasm burning strongly. If it weakens, then we associate with those in whom it is burning strongly. If you go to a, what do they call them in New Vrindavan, Festival of the Holy Name, right? You go to the Festival of the Holy Name, or you go to the thing that they have in North Carolina, Kirtan Mela, they have something over there. Sadhu Sangha, correct. They have Sadhu Sangha, and even in temples they have opportunities to basically once again build up the enthusiasm. The point is that if you're aware of it and sincere in a desire to address it, then the nature of spiritual life is such that it offers us many easy avenues to address it. All it needs is some kind of sincerity in us to rectify it. And at this point, I would like to hear from other devotees also. What is your sense? Somebody would like to contribute?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Maybe I can. As you rightly said, I think the most important thing is devotee association. And even sometimes we feel we are weak, they will be the one who pull us up. And then in my case, I see chanting is important, and then deity worship also is very important. Even though we may be not be an expert in deity worship and all that, but we do it according to what we can, and it will develop at one point in time. And for us, we have having deity for many years now, more than 40 years. And I think everything revolves around them. We wake up, we do this, we do that program. And sometimes we even take our deity to other people's place, even though they're delicate to carry around. And we've done it a few times. We say, okay, let's go together. And we make other people also become inspired to do it. And this is what I would say, bro.
Very good points. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
So I would like to put 2 points, Prabhu. The way I see is, until and unless we get mercy from each individual, whether he's a devotee or a non-devotee, we need to get that mercy with no hangings, right? No leftovers. That makes a devotee successful, and definitely mercy flows through Guru Maharaj. And if you see each individual who you interact with has the same, with the same intent, with the same focus, whether you're talking to Guru Maharaj or spiritual master or a devotee, that will take you to the proper destination.
Thank you, Prabhu. Excellent point.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Generally, what helps me, Prabhuji, like independent of circumstances, like I keep one, like a thumb rule, I keep that devotees are the genuine well-wishers. Just trust them, because every time the suggestion that you receive, because generally devotees are gentle, but still because of our own weakness, sometimes you may like it or you may not be able to follow it, but still that thumb rule helps me to remember that even after a long time also, this is something I need to do. This devotee wants me to do that. That can be Shaksha Guru, or that can be a senior devotees. So that thumb rule helps me, Prabhuji, like just to stick to the process, because trusting the devotees.
Very good point. Thank you, Ravi. Any further thoughts from you, Nanda Prabhu?
Thank you, Prabhu. That's really wonderful, actually. I like the Ravi Prabhu's point of being accountable to another devotee or a mentor type of person would also help, I guess, in order to be, because not everybody can go to Guru Maharaj and say, oh, I will submit my sadhana chart. But then we can have a mentor who can advise us or encourage us or whatever level. I think that I see that's a very nice point. I believe it's a wonderful point. Deity worship, yes, definitely regulates our life. One thing that I notice, or it's probably, I don't know whether everybody has this problem, has the same problem, but one problem that I notice myself is that when I try to regulate my life, and sometimes you cannot do some physical limitations to regulate your life, then what happens? That becomes an excuse. It becomes an excuse, and you say that, oh, see, because I cannot do this, so I would rather not do this. Or sometimes what happens is I won't do that, but then I feel more inspired to do that, and then I get feel that I tried one more time, still I am unable to do. So must be something truly physically, physical limitation truly exists. But then this this on and off, on one time you feel that the physical limitation, you try to reduce or try to track back a little bit, but another time you get inspired and go back to the same level, and then you feel hurt again, and then you come back to it. So this kind of cycle goes on in your sadhana, in your things, and at times it feels that am I really trying to improve myself, or am I trying to find some excuse in the name of physical limitation? I'm just trying to take it easy. What is it? These are some of the things that goes in my in my thoughts, and so I don't know. Is there any answer for that, or is it just something that everybody goes through, or I don't know, Prabhu?
Definitely, everybody goes through this. I think you're just being honest and forthcoming about it. Everybody goes through this, and it's essentially the struggles of the mind. The mind can be, in the 11th canto, there is the pastime of the Avanti Brahman, and should definitely read it. Each and every verse, there is an answer to the question that you've asked, that he was a rich person and then he becomes poor, and everybody starts disrespecting him. And then he tries to find what is the cause of his misery. And then he goes through the whole bucket list. Not this, not this, not this. And then he says, aha, I know what is the cause of my problem. It's my mind. And then the rest of it is how he addresses the problem with of the mind. It's part of it's part of Bhakti Vinod Thakur's understand, the Mana Shaksha, where he says the role of the mind, how it can be your friend and your enemy. How can you teach your mind to collaborate with you as opposed to fight with you? So the problem is universal, but there are also ways to address it. It's not unsurmountable. It's not that we will win in one day, but there is a process that is given that will help us conquer day by day. And in each of our lives, in your life also, if you see that maybe you're concerned about your mind, but you definitely have a lot more control on it than what you had when you started the process of bhakti. You definitely have a lot more control on it than others who are not following the process. So it is good to feel that tension that I would like to be there and I'm not there, and that basically is the catalyst of our progress. It is also good to recognize the progress that you've made, because that is testimony to the efficacy of the process. So both of them are important. But I would say read the Avanti Brahman. I forget which chapter in the 11th canto. It's towards the end of the 11th canto. But it's all about the mind.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for the nice question. Okay. Continuing to verse 35. Trilokim devayanena soti vrajya munenapi prasastadya dhruvagati Vishnupada Bhayaga. Dhrumaraj thus surpassed the 7 planetary system of the great sages who are known as Saptarishi. Beyond that region, he achieved the transcendental situation of permanent life in the planet where Lord Vishnu lives. So Prabhupada says that only spiritual astronauts can pilot their airplane beyond the 7 planets and arrive in the region of eternal blissful life. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Parastasmatu Bhavanya. This is 820. Beyond this planetary system begins the spiritual sky, where everything is permanent and blissful. The planets there are known as Vishnu Loka or Vaikuntha Loka. In terms of a more analytical understanding of the position of Dhruvaloka, read the commentary by Prabhupada on Canto 5, Chapter 23, verse 9, where he talks more about the location and the position of Dhruvaloka. We won't go in it now, just because it's kind of details and needs context also. Okay, verse 36. Yad braha jamanam sarucheva sarvato lokas trayo hai anuve brajantayete yanna brajan jantushyo yenugraha vrajanti bhadrani charanti ye nisham. The self-effulgent Vaikuntha planets, by whose illumination alone all the illuminating planets within this material world give off reflected light, cannot be reached by those who are not merciful to other living entities. Only persons who constantly engage in welfare activities for other living entities can reach the Vaikuntha planet. So in 5 verses, from verse 36 to 40, Maitreya Rishi, he describes the glories of Dhruvaloka. So Dhruva Maharaj has now reached Vaikuntha. And the process of reaching Vaikuntha is mentioned in these 2 verses. 2 aspects of Vaikuntha is described. It is self-effulgent and it is only accessible to those who are engaged in the welfare of others. And we should also understand that at least within the context of Dhruva Leela, the terms Vaikuntha, Dhruvaloka, and Shishumar, they are used interchangeably. They refer to the same thing. In a broader context, they might refer to different. But in this context, they're referring to essentially Dhruvaloka. So, so Prabhupada says that the Bhagavad Gita confirms that the spiritual planets do not need any illumination. So this is in the chapter 15, verse 6. Na tad bhashyate suryo na shanshako na pavaka. That does not need any illumination by the sun or any other thing, because they are self-illuminated or illuminated by the effulgence of Krishna. Then Prabhupada says that people can be transferred to Vaikuntha Lok if they incessantly engage in the welfare activities of other living entities. So reading this verse, one might think that if a person is charitable, then he becomes qualified to enter into the spiritual world. If the person is constantly thinking of the welfare, trying to help the poor, the needy, the hungry, then he'll be transferred to the Vaikuntha planet. But the focus over here is all other living entities. So what about the person who is not sick? What about the person who is opulent? So people who are charitable will ignore them. They'll say that, okay, this person is healthy, does not need my mercy. So this criteria of all living entities is only possible when one sees everybody in relationship to Krishna. So the verse describes the symptom and it allows the reader to derive the cause. That only when a person sees everybody in relationship to Krishna, then the person can truly become the well-wisher for everyone. And only through the process of devotion can one develop this vision. So Prabhupada in the purport, he compares the different paths. So he says the karmis, they are envious of one another. So, and then he says simply for sense gratification, they can kill thousands of innocent animals. 2 characteristics Prabhupada says. They're envious because the nature of material world is limited resources, which means that what you have, I cannot have. And what I have, I will not give to you. So envy comes. And the killing of the animal points to sense gratification. That just for their sense gratification, they are willing to commit any kinds of acts. Then Prabhupada says, Jnanis, they are not as sinful as the karmis. but they do not have this compassion in them. They don't have this desire to reclaim others. So they are also not qualified to go to the spiritual world. Then the yogis. The yogis, they're also engaged in self-aggrandizement, which is developing their own mystic powers or trying to assure their own path to some destination. So they are not qualified. Then Prabhupada says, Vaishnavas who are servants of the Lord come forward in the actual field of work in Krishna consciousness to reclaim fallen souls. Only Krishna conscious persons are eligible to enter into the spiritual world. This is clearly stated, that is clearly stated in this verse and is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. When the Lord says that no one is dearer to him than those who preach the gospel of Bhagavad Gita to the world. Right? So this is said, Krishna says that in the 18th chapter, verse 68 and 60. Right? Okay, moving on to the next verse. Verse 37. Shanta samdrasha suddha sarvabhutanu anubhutanuranjanaha yantya anja shachutpadam achut priya bandavaha. Persons who are peaceful, equipoised, cleansed, and purified, and who know the art of pleasing all other living entities, keep friendship only with devotees of the Lord. They alone can very easily achieve the perfection of going back home, back to Godhead. So 5 qualities of those who are qualified to enter into Vaikuntha is mentioned, 4 in this verse, 1 in the previous verse. So Shanta, peaceful; Samdrisha, equipoised; Shuddha, cleansed or purified; Sarvabhuta Anuranjana, that pleasing all living entities; and Bhadrani Charanti Ye Anisham, that they are engaged in the welfare activities of all living entities. This is from the previous verse. So such people, Yanti Anjasa Achyuta Padam, they very quickly go back to the lotus feet of the Lord. And what do they do over there? Achyuta Priya Bandhava. There they become friends with those who are dear to Achyuta. So Achyuta Priya, those who are devotees of the Lord, Bandhava. There they become friends with them. So you'll probably note that some of the qualities that are mentioned over here are very similar to the qualities mentioned in Bhagavad Gita about those in the mode of goodness. But we already know that the mode of goodness is not a sufficient qualification to go back to Godhead. In fact, it's not even a necessary qualification. But the reason that it is mentioned over here is that these qualities, they also acquire a spiritual perspective. So a person in the mode of goodness may be peaceful because following the rules and regulations of the scriptures. A devotee is peaceful because surrendered to Krishna. Samdrisha, that one who is able to understand that the good and bad is happening because of one's karma, becomes Samdrisha, mode of goodness. But one who sees the Lord in everybody and everybody in the Lord becomes Samdrisha. Shuddha means one who is purified of the lower modes in the mode of goodness, staying in more goodness. Shuddha also means that one who is purified of all material contaminations, including the mode of goodness. And Sarvabhuta Anuranjana, pleasing all living entities. How? By engaging in that activity that is for their ultimate welfare. So engaging in welfare activities for those in the mode of goodness is doing charitable work like digging wells or setting up centers to feed and help the poor. For the devotee, Badrani Charanti Yanisham is helping everybody take to Krishna consciousness. So in this context, these qualities are actually spiritual qualities. So Srila Prabhupada has a fairly long purport on this, and he contrasts these qualities. Shanta between a devotee and another Samadrashta. Prabhupada notes that ISKCON has been established as per this principle of Samadrashta. He says that when the temples are established, they don't discriminate between who can come and who cannot come. And everybody is welcome, whether the person is a Brahman or a Shudra or Malecha, Yavan, regardless, everybody is welcome. And this Samdrisha, it continues. It's not just to welcome them inside, but it is also to make them a part of the family, because it has been established on the principle of spiritual equality. Prabhupada says we invite everyone without discrimination. We request everyone to sit down and chant the Hare Krishna mantra and to take as much prasad as we can supply. And thus everyone is pleased with us. This was essentially the mantra of Prabhupada's success. When he started in 26 Second Avenue, this was the simple principle that he followed, that he invited everyone. He gave them an opportunity to chant, and he gave them as much prasad as he could afford. As the movement grew, the first thing that he did was to improve both the quality and the quantity of the prasad. And the success of the movement is testimony to the accuracy of the statements in the Bhagavatam. If one takes to them sincerely, then one can apply each one of them and also witness the same success. Okay. Verse 38. Ityautan pada putro dhruva krishna parayanaha abhutrayanam lokanam chudamanirivamalaha. In this way, the fully Krishna conscious Dhruva Maharaj, the exalted son of Maharaj Utanpad, attained the summit of the three status of planetary system. So Prabhupada says that Krishna Parayana is the exact Sanskrit terminology of Krishna consciousness. Parayana means going forward. Anybody who is going forward to the goal of Krishna is called Krishna Parayana. So Prabhupada is we were just having this discussion a few minutes ago, and we see that how strong the mercy of Prabhupada is, that he's giving us the answer to that discussion, that Krishna consciousness is Krishna Parayana, right? It is not Krishna Sharanam. It is not acquiring perfection in Krishna consciousness. It is not being fully transcendental to the modes. It is not being devoid of all material contamination, but simply going forward. So as long as there is that movement, which essentially is propelled by our sincerity, as long as we are being introspective, that where am I, where do I need to be, and what can I do to get there. So that parayana will always be there. The Krishna consciousness will be there. That is Krishna consciousness. That being conscious of our desire to be with Krishna. It's not chanting rounds perfectly, doing perfect deity worship, or becoming a scholar. Those all are manifestations that appear in Krishna Parayana. That as we go forward, these are all things. This is how things will manifest. That our worship of the deities becomes stronger. The deities' reciprocation becomes stronger. Our understanding of the scripture becomes deeper. Above all, our desire to extend mercy to the devotees become stronger. At the root, it is simply making progress in Krishna consciousness. Okay. I'll do 2 more verses and then we can pause for discussion. Gambhir vego nimisham jyotisham chakramahitam yasmin brahmati kauravya medhyam iva gavam ganaha. Saint Maitreya continued, my dear Vidur, descendant of Kuru, as a herd of bulls circumambulates a central pole on the right side, all the luminaries within the universal sky unceasingly circumambulate the abode of Dhruva Maharaj with great force and speed. The glories of Dhruva Loka. Analogy is given that if there are bulls that are yoked to a central pole and then they move, so that kind of arrangement is used. I have seen that used to extract oil from, at least the one where I saw it was from sesame seeds. So there are sesame seeds in the center and they had some mechanism, but ultimately it was yoked to a bull and the bull was moving around. And by that, the seeds were getting crushed and the oil was coming on. Similarly, Dhruva Loka does not move. It is at the center. It is stationary. All the other planets, they revolve around it. Prabhupada says, from a statement in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is understood that even the sun travels 16,000 miles in a second. And from Brahma Samhita, we understand from the shloka beginning, Yash Chakshu Resha Savita Sakala Grahanam, that the sun is considered to be the eye of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda. And it also has a specific orbit within which it circles. Similarly, all other planets have their specific orbits. But together, all of them encircle the pole star of Dhruva Loka, where Dhruva Maharaj is situated at the summit of the 3 worlds. We can only imagine how highly exalted the position of a devotee is. And certainly, we cannot even conceive how exalted is the position of the personality of Godhead. So the pure devotee residing in this material world has this exalted position that the entire material world is revolving around him. The Prabhupada says that how exalted is the position of the devotee. And from that one can try and estimate how exalted the position of the Lord himself is. Okay, verse 40, after that we'll we'll pause. We're almost at the end of the chapter, but I'll be rushing in a little bit. The verses don't have a lot of purports, but still I'll be rushing it a little. Mahimana vilokyasya narado bhagavan rishihi atodyam vitudan shlokan satrigaya prachetasham. After observing the glories of Dhruva Maharaj, the great sage Narad, playing his veena, went to the sacrificial arena of the Prachetas and very happily chanted the following 3 verses. So this verse actually sets the stage of the subsequent question and answers, because Maitreya introduces Prachetas here, and then Vidur will ask about the Prachetas. Now, the way the verse is constructed, it appears that Dhruva went to Dhruvaloka, Narad Muni witnessed it, and then he goes and he speaks to the Prachetas. But actually, there's a difference of millions of years between the two, because the Prachetas are a distant descendant of Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva Maharaj was in the Swayambhavu Manvantra, and the Prachetas come in the 6th Manvantra. So we see that in Bhagavatam and in the Puranas that they don't concern themselves much with the chronology. They're more focusing on incidents. So Maitreya speaks about these 2 incidents as if they happened next to one another, but actually before reaching Prachetas, the Prithu Maharaj appears, and then his distant descendant are the Prachetas. Narad Muni also recites the pastimes of Dhruva in Naradya Purana. So in Bhakti Subodhya, a section of it is called Naradya Purana, and there also Narad recites the pastimes. Here he speaks only 3 verses, but there he recites more extensively. Prabhupada says that the great sage Narad was the spiritual master of Dhruva Maharaj. Certainly he was very glad to see Dhruva's glory. As a father is very happy to see the son's advancement in every respect, so the spiritual master is very happy to observe the ascendancy of his disciple. Okay, so we'll pause here and see if there's any discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. The residence of Dhruvaloka, we know it's part of the Vaikuntha Loka, even though it is like on the border of the, we can say, the material world, we can see it. But the residence, for example, some devotee can go there, or I know I'm asking very difficult question, but maybe you have read somewhere.
I haven't, so outside of this chapter, I haven't. Later on in the chapter, when the Falstuti of Dhruva Leela is described, then basically it is said that those who follow the path of Dhruva, who listen to his pastime with faith, they get to go to Dhruvaloka. But other than that, I haven't seen any like specific processes that are recommended to go to Dhruvaloka, or the conception that one develops to go to Dhruvaloka. Not, at least not in the Bhagavatam, maybe in other scriptures, but at least not in the Bhagavatam.
Yeah, why I'm asking that, because you know, when you look at the pictures that now they are taking from, you know, from whatever telescope they're taking it. When you can see like everything is revolving, like it's like a whirlpool of a planet turning around that we can't even imagine. Now all this is turning around Dvaloka. It's a massive thing, and Dvaloka must be very, very important as a place.
It is because Lord Vishnu resides there. So Shodasha Vishnu resides there. We see that the Devas, when they're in trouble, they go to Brahma. Brahma takes them to the region of Dhruvaloka. So the planet is said to be in the region of Dhruvaloka. Sometimes it's called Shishumar. And there they give, they recite Pusha Shukta and the other prayers. So it's the spiritual world in the material world. That's what makes it so important. That's why the whole Prabhupada says. That's why everything is revolving around it. Not because Dhruva is present there. I mean, he's an advanced devotee, but Lord Vishnu is present over there.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Thank you.
Okay. So if you don't have any further discussion, we'll stop here. Vanchakalpatarubhayascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Shila Prabhupada ki jai. Thai Gaur. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.